the idea that you have to get stuck is, I think, a fallacy. Just like anything, I don't believe there are barriers to anything. Anyone can achieve anything they want in life if they are prepared to find where those edges are and push past them. Anyone can become a brain surgeon. Anyone can go to space. Anyone can do anything as long as they're prepared to push in that direction. Now, if you can get your property portfolio right, it can be essentially limitless.
Welcome to the Get Invested podcast, where we share great conversations with experts from all walks of life to uncover their secret know-how and where they invest their time, their skills and their money, and the benefits that this has created. You see, the truth is that everyone invests. Every minute of every day, we're investing our time, our skills, our energy and our money in something. Some of us are investing consciously, some unconsciously, sometimes for good, sometimes for bad, and sometimes for no impact. Get Invested will help you to start living by design, not by default. I'm going to help you to make it happen, not let it happen. You will hear the top tips on how you can live with conscious intent so that you can live more, work less, and leave a living legacy by investing now. Listen to the show to discover the top tips on how to get started, make the most of your investment journey, and ultimately to be living your dream, not someone else's. More episodes can be found on iTunes or at bushymartin.com.au/get invested. Thanks for listening, and now let's get invested. Hi, freedom fighters. What's holding you back from the life you've always wanted and always dreamed of? And what's holding you back from investing in property properly to secure your future? Are you concerned that you won't be able to afford it? Or that it's going to cost you too much money and it's going to limit your lifestyle? Or if you've invested in property already and it's not working for you the way that you expected, what's holding you back from revisiting it and getting it sorted properly so that it is working for you? If you've caught yourself pondering on any or all of these questions, then this week's episode may just give you the clarity and comfort that you need to take your next step with confidence. Last week, I opened your ears and your mind's eye to the opportunities of becoming limitless by transforming your mindset, your motivation, and your methods. And we heard how Goose McGrath turned his life around by shifting his limitless approach from endless hours propped up by substance abuse to endless opportunity supported by property. This week, I want to drill down to how you can actually create a limitless life, and my like-minded guest Goose and I show you how investing in property is a great vehicle to help you make this happen. One of the many things I like and admire about Goose is that he's always open and always learning and wanting to learn. He's always asking why. And he keeps on asking and testing the edges until he arrives at a better, creative solution. Because the truth is that if you have and maintain a totally open mind without judgment or limiting beliefs, then you can create new and exciting solutions to old and any problems. If you don't accept the status quo nor blindly accept traditional wisdom as irrefutable truth, then you open your mind to revisit old problems with a fresh and new approach to arrive at better outcomes. And this is exactly what Goose has successfully done with his approach to property investment. What do I mean by this? Well, let me give you an example. The conventionally accepted maxim around property is that you either invest for capital growth or you invest for cash flow, but you can't have both at the same time, or at least very rarely if you get lucky, and then generally not for very long. So, most property investors end up doing one of two things. They either invest for long-term capital growth and accept that the property is going to cost them hundreds of dollars a week while they hold on for the years that it takes to grow their nest egg, or they invest for cash flow in remote locations that don't experience any growth in value, and they buy properties that put a few bucks a week in their pocket after all the expenses are taken out, but never enough to retire on. But does the capital growth or cash flow argument really stack up? Well, in my opinion, no. As I outline in my book, The Freedom Formula, it's possible to combine a property that enjoys strong capital growth with positive cash flow so that your investment properties are affordable and look after themselves without impacting on your salary, your savings, or your lifestyle. And this enables you to hold them comfortably and affordably for the 15 years plus that's required for your next egg to grow and to achieve your lifestyle goals. So yes, you can have both capital growth and positive cash flow. And our team at Know How are experts at showing you how to achieve this. And Goose McGrath and his team at Dash Dot have now taken this to another level. As we discuss in more detail in today's chat, Goose and his partner Gabby have created the elusive Holy Trinity of property. Investment properties that give you capital growth, positive cash flow, and value-added potential. Now, as you'll hear, this sounds more like the Holy Grail than the Holy Trinity, because this is the ultimate and generally thought of as elusive and impossible to achieve. But here's the rub. Goose, Gabby and Dash Dot's buyers agents team have been achieving this golden triumvirate of growth, cash flow and value-added potential consistently for their clients for years now. And Goose has very generously peeled back the curtain for me personally to learn his secrets and see in detail how this is being achieved. And the results are very impressive. One of the early properties they helped secure for one of their clients in Queensland ticks all of the Holy Trinity boxes of above average capital growth, positive cash flow and value add. Goose and the Dash Dot team helped their clients Ebden and May to secure property for $469,000 that grew 78.5% in value in the first 18 months, is cash flow positive by putting about $90 a week in their pockets every week after all of the expenses are taken into account, and has a rental yield of 6.42%, which is high. It also has the added value add of dual occupancy and a strata title subdivision. And this is not an isolated case. And the magic of the Holy Trinity approach is just one of the many innovative approaches that Goose and Dash Dot are taking to wake up and shake up the world of investing. In his own awesome book, Limitless, The Renegade's Guide to Building Wealth Through Property, Goose lays out his formula for success to enjoy a limitless life, including his 25-1 life map, his morning formula, the 4 keys to building wealth holistically, the importance of fractal economics and the apex progression, and all of this to achieve your version of your limitless lifestyle. And to support all of this at a tactical level, he details the 5 steps and key questions to finding the right property location, along with Dash Dot's 8-step property selection funnel to secure the best property to suit your specific needs and goals. And Goose and I dig into some of these in our continuing discussion today. All of these form part of his limitless property strategy that has helped his clients achieve an average of 61.75% return on capital in just the first 12 months, and is helping property investors to achieve their wealth, cash flow and freedom goals up to 6 times faster than traditional investing strategies, while also reducing their risk. And interestingly, many of his innovative approaches mirror and parallel our Living by Design approach and our integrated self-health, wealth, sustainable success strategy that I detail in my book, The Freedom Formula, and we implement through our Know How property finance team. But Goose and Dash Dot have also created some very good, interesting alternative options and how to help you make this happen. And if you want to learn more about them and to get a taste of Goose's unique Dash Dot property approach, you can watch his intro video on how to build a property portfolio up to 6 times faster with much less risk by jumping on dashdot.info/6xbushy. That's dashdot.info/6xbushy. Or you can just click on the link in the show notes, or just email me at bushy@knowhowproperty.com.au and we'll shoot you through the details. Now, Goose's personal journey and his unique Dash Dot Holy Trinity approach confirms that it doesn't matter where you're at, you can take steps to transform your life and property can be the best vehicle to help you do just that. And if you want to find out more on how, I'd love to personally show you. Join me as I take new and experienced investors to new heights through our unique Know-How Property Freedom Flight program, where I'll guide you through our proven process for property investment success. To book your ticket or to find out more, click the link in the show notes at knowhowproperty.com.au/freedom fighters. That's knowhowproperty.com.au/freedom-fighters. Or just visit knowhowproperty.com.au and follow our way there. And if you put know-how and -dot together, you have the ideal independent professional combination to design and satisfy all of your lifestyle goals, your property strategy, finance structuring, and your property securement needs. Because the reality is that if you want to create any degree of impact, whether it be in your own life, your family's life, or in the lives of others, you need to build wealth holistically. And in my humble opinion, property continues to be the best vehicle to power you along the road so that you can get to where you want to faster. And if you're looking for keys to your property vehicle and the motivation to get behind the wheel, to take the handbrake of fear and doubt off, and then put down the accelerator of confidence and enjoy part 2 of my positive, high energy and very engaging chat with Goose McGrath.
So the buyer's agency, though, so you decide to go down that route. I mean, you could have gone down the mortgage broking route. You could have gone down the real estate sales route. You could have gone down a whole bunch of routes.
Yep.
Why the buyer's agency in particular?
Yeah, it's a good question because the basis that we felt that we could help people was the basis that we'd actually developed a bit of a research and buying methodology. So finance was never the specialty, but we'd actually worked out, we had managed to identify markets across the country that would produce good returns and had been able to deepen our methodology around identifying locations around the country. And we thought, okay, we can actually help people to make good buying decisions. That was really the premise. And we can actually help people to try and understand what types of properties they might need to buy in order to move them in the right direction and stuff like that. So it was centered around research first. So that's the interesting thing is I think that we didn't wake up one day and say, you know what, let's start a real estate company. We developed a methodology that allowed us to identify better performing assets in better locations and went, okay, God, this is pretty cool. How can we help other people tap into this methodology? That's now wildly developed. Like we've got full-time data scientists and all kinds of stuff now. It's awesome. But back then it was spreadsheets and analysis and all this kind of stuff. So
yeah, well, I mean, and that's a great transition and segue into your book Limitless, which I think captures all of that. It not only captures your past history and the journey you went on that brought you to property, but it really starts to define. And I just love the way you've captured some often can be quite confusing and complex concepts, and you boil them down into easily digestible pieces. And as a visual person, I can very quickly picture exactly what you're talking about. I love you. I mean, you've touched on the Holy Trinity and the key elements. I'm actually calling it the Holy Grail, mate, because that three-sided triangle. If you get properties in the sweet spot of that, then that is a recipe for success. There's no question about it. So can you, 100%. For the listeners again, because we sort of jumped across it very quickly, can you talk to us, break the Holy Trinity down, and perhaps give us an example of properties that you've either found or you've helped others buy that tick the boxes and why?
Yeah, it's good. It's great. Yeah, it's great, right? So I believe that this is the only thing that anyone ever needs to work out how to do, right, is to find properties which are cash flow positive. So when we're talking about cash flow positive, we mean net cash flow positive after expenses, right? Must be in a high growth area and must have what we call value add potential. Now, value add potential can come about in a variety of different ways. Could be buying under market value, make your money on the way in. could have the ability to do a cosmetic renovation, which, you know, it could be $10,000 to $15,000 cosmetic renovation, which is a great thing to do if you get that. Could be the ability to add a granny flat. Could be the ability to do a subdivision. You know, these are the kind of general premises. Yeah. And there's even another. We've broken this down into a even more complex matrix now. But yeah, there's even stuff like buying multiple occupancy properties that you can strata subdivide and stuff like that too. Yeah. The premise though is buy properties which produce more income than they use. Make sure they go up in value, and make sure that you've got some way to control the outcome or have another built-in exit strategy, so that even if your best assumptions go to waste, then you're still safe. So if one out of any three of those things goes wrong or becomes untrue for whatever reason, so for example, if all your tenants move out and the vacancy rate goes up, well, what could you do to the property? Maybe you could do a cosmetic renovation and make it more appealing and get better tenants. What if you don't get the growth? Well, maybe you could subdivide it and manufacture the equity, etc., like that. So, what happens if you get good yields and good growth, and for some reason the value add doesn't stack up? Well, you probably don't need it anyway, right? So it's this idea that having a bit of basically creating an ecosystem, it all starts to feed itself. You know, as you have the serviceability or the cash flow to be able to liquidate the equity, you can use that to fund your value adds. The value adds can then help you to fund more purchases or increase your equity or increase your cash flow, and it creates this self-fulfilling cycle, which feeds an idea that we call, you know, fractal economics, which is a mental model more than a mathematical solution. But the general premise is, you know, if you buy properties that go up in value, and, you know, you increase your serviceable income as you go, you're going to be able to create a replicable system that's self-similar at different scales. Does that kind of cover the Holy Trinity? And you want an example?
Yeah, and let's cover both the Holy Trinity and the fractal economics within the context of take us through a property that and why it's ticked the boxes in terms of the Holy Trinity and satisfied the fractal economics exercise. Can you do that?
Yeah, totally. So I'll start with because we just were there. I'll talk about the two properties that we bought right before, you know, right as we were starting the business. So we bought one property that was subdividable, so value add, under market value add. Now the yields weren't very good. Like yields about 5%, 4.8%, something like that.
That's still not bad.
It's not bad, but it's not like we're typically targeting sort of sixes now, right? So, so it wasn't that bad, but we were moving into it anyway, and the idea was to do renovation. But the point of that though is that we, you know, but even based on the appraised rent that we got, even though we lived there, we get a rental appraisal, et cetera, we were able to then leverage the equity out of the under market value to go and buy another property, which, you know, we bought again for under market value and was at about a 6.5% yield, right? And so that's simple. We did, and so the total cost for us, the total amount of cash we had to put our hand in our pocket for to buy the second property was $1,500. That's it, to pay a conveyancer. Yeah. Everything else was covered by the first property. Now that's an example of how you can use one property to buy another. It's pretty simple. Yep. You know, examples of properties that we've done for other people like this, you know, is for example, there was one that we bought that was 6.3% yield, 1,500 square meter block. So you can subdivide that into three lots, and, you know, in a high growth area, it's gone up by 11% in the last 12 months. You know, these are the kind of things we're looking for now. And the thing is, our methodology, our research methodology, the Holy Trinity is a set of principles, right? It's a set of principles that should guide your buying decision, but it doesn't answer the whole question. It doesn't tell you where to buy, for example.
Of course.
And so in order to get better growth, you need to have better information. In order to have, you know, more secure outcomes in any of those factors, you need to have better information. So in a general sense, there's three kind of phases, and we'll kind of lean into that now, but in building a property portfolio, which is the foundation stage, the acceleration stage, and the legacy stage. Now, the goal really is to understand where you're at, right? And so if you're just starting out, the types of properties that are going to meet the Holy Trinity criteria are going to be different if you're starting them versus if you're advanced.
Yes.
So if you're just starting and it's your first property, the value adds you're going to look for probably shouldn't be subdivision, right? You don't have the cash to realize it. You don't have the experience, the knowledge, or any of that kind of stuff. You just don't know what you're doing. So it's actually going to be a waste of time, energy, and effort. You're going to get a subpar outcome. Yeah. If you're just starting, the best possible solution you can do is to focus on buying in a really good growth area, because you're probably going to need to accelerate your capital. Yep. Focus on buying under market value, and focus on making sure you've got a high enough yield to cover all of the operating expenses of the property. Simple. Yes. You're going for growth, but you're doing it in a way that the property can wash its own face. The way that I call it
affordable growth. They go for growth, but make it affordable.
Yeah, totally.
Structure, and it's all about the structuring. If you structure it in a way that's actually, it doesn't put a lot of money in your pocket, but it puts some money in your pocket, then it's no burden on your salary, your savings, your
exactly. Life. The way that I like to think about it is this, Bushy. It's like, in business, if I was to walk outside and get hit by a bus and go into a coma for 12 months, our business may still exist, but it certainly wouldn't be in as good a shape as it is if I was here every day, right? If I buy properties which are producing more income than they use, they're in good growth areas, and I get hit by a bus and I go into a coma for 12 months, I'm going to wake up wealthier than when I went to sleep.
Yep.
And that's what you want. You want to create a self-perpetuating, wealth creation machine. And you don't want to be buying out of, emotion and things like that. You want to go, okay, what is the machine that I'm building, and why am I building it? Where am I trying to get to? How long is it going to take me to get there? What are the pieces I need to put in the machine to make that happen? And how am I going to know that I'm not going to get stuck?
Spot on. No, I love it. Something I wouldn't mind just sort of bouncing around with you, because the crystal ball in that triangle is the growth piece.
Yeah, totally.
And it's, you've been doing it now for a few years, but the real test will be in 10 to 15 years' time.
100%.
When that growth actually eventuates or doesn't. Well, talk to me about and it probably tied up in your eight-step selection funnel that Dash.use that you also talk about in your great book.
Yep.
Talk us through what gives you confidence around that growth piece. So if you're going to identify an area that is going to grow, what are the things that you're looking for that are going to give you confidence that's going to happen?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, actually. I'm going to open up a document, because we did a podcast on this today talking about five ways to target emerging markets.
Yes.
And because it's pretty interesting, you're right. How would you know? Right, basically, it's the question that I've asked the whole way through. How would you know? How would you know if you're buying in a growth location? Now, for reference, our track record to date is that we get an average of 15% capital growth in the first 12 months. So it's not a case of going, well, we'll see in 10 years. But the question, of course, is it the right location to be investing for the next 10 years?
Yes.
And that's an interesting question, because you could very easily buy in mining towns and stuff like that and get fast growth. The fast growth isn't the goal, right? The way that I see it is there's this period of time that we call the Goldilocks zone, right, where the markets aren't too hot, they're also not too cool. Now, there's a few interesting things that happen to let you know that you're in the Goldilocks zone. So, for example, sales volumes increase, rents increase first, then growth increases and all this kind of stuff. But you've got to understand why. So you can kind of look at all these metrics. Now, we want to position ourselves in the Goldilocks zone, which is right before the market starts to take off. Now, what we typically end up doing is we end up buying in a market for about 6 months, and then everybody else rushes in, and that's our opportunity to get out, and then the market gets pushed up by all of the other buyer activity. So, we have 140 in the book. I think it says 120 or something. We actually have 147 metrics that we look at all the way from a national all the way down to a street level analysis of how do we know if property is going to grow more than another property, or an area is going to grow more than another property area, all that kind of stuff. Five keys to look for though: supply and demand. Supply versus demand, and that's a really interesting one that you can calculate. A lot of people are like, I don't know, how would you know? I guess I can look at a map and go, is there big fields next door? But there's easier ways to work it out. So you can do the sales listings, 1 month sales listings divided by the 12 months sales count average. That gives you a supply and demand metric, which you can measure, and you can measure the velocity of change between those 2 points. Rental vacancy rates, you want to see those going down. But interestingly, these are all lagging indicators. These are all things that have happened in the past.
Yeah.
So, and so is median rents. So you want to see median rents increasing. Now, not just median yields, because yields are relative to the property price, okay?
Exactly.
So you could see yields go up on the basis that rent is staying the same and property prices are going down, okay? Yeah. So just looking for increasing yields is not accurate. Yeah. What you want to see is increasing rents, okay? So if you can see that, if you can see, what we actually look for is an inflection change. If demand is, say, 10 and supply is 5, and if it is static at that point and nothing is changing in that market, you're going to have steady growth but not explosive growth. It's going to grow, but it's going to be probably your national averages, your 5s and 6s and stuff. Yeah. It's not going to, there's no meaningful change. What we actually look for is, where's the inflection point? Where do we see supply diminish in relation to demand, or demand rapidly increase? And we want to see that inflection point.
Yeah.
We also then want to see vacancy rates coming down, and we want to see median rents rising as opposed to median yields. That's all lagging indicators, though.
Yeah. So
then what you want to look for is what's the project pipeline and what's the future supply risk, right? So future supply risk, we can look at the 18-month average of monthly building approvals times 100 divided by the number of existing houses. That gives you a really good idea of, if there's a town of 1,000 people and there's 1,000 people live in there's a town of 1,000 houses and 1,000 people live there, you've got an equilibrium of supply and demand. And then if someone comes along and creates 1,000 jobs, so another 1,000 people want to move there and there's only another 1,000 houses, then you've got twice as much demand as there is supply. But if Stockland are going to release 2,000 houses onto the market in the next 3 months, then you're going to have a future supply risk, which is going to put that equilibrium in the opposite direction. So you've got to think about all that kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
And then project pipeline, this is probably the biggest one. What you're actually looking for is what is driving the economy to change and why, but also how long is it actually going to stick around for? Because there's no point that you can have $1 billion project that happens in a town and it can be like a sugar hit. I remember.
Just look at Gladstone, some of those mining towns, a massive growth, and then it just falls off the cliff because once that project's done, that's game over.
This is a great example, Bushy, because I normally don't talk about the locations that we're buying, right? But we're buying in Rockhampton right now, and you might be like, Rockhampton? Because that's had the same growth story as Gladstone as well. It went up and it crashed. And why did it go up and it crashed? Went up and it crashed because it only had a single source economy that was based around resources, and it had no other strings in the bow. It was a one-trick pony, and it crashed. And so did Gladstone. And so did all these other places. So did Mandurah. So did Perth. So did heaps and heaps of places. But what is really fascinating is looking at the economies where the governments learned. And they said, because every government is a business, right? So their business crashed, the rates went down, their constituents were unhappy. They're trying to lead a society in their own world that basically thinks the world's gone tits up. They're not happy with it. So they're going, okay, well, how do we make this better, and how do we make sure we don't have that kind of crash again? Gladstone is an economy where I haven't seen them learn that lesson as much. Rockhampton, on the other hand, is an economy that has learned that lesson, right? So there's significant amounts of investment away from the original source of revenue, so away from the resources sector. So things like, a $1.5 billion university expansion, $700 million in energy projects. There's all these other kind of things going on there. Now, the interesting thing is looking at how that money is going to stay in the area. I remember another example of this where I remember a couple of years ago, early on, I think maybe before we bought the property in Geelong, I was looking at Port Augusta, and I was thinking, wow, look at the yields. And I was looking up the projects and I was like, there's $9 billion of projects happening here. Oh my God, I think I've just found the mecca. So this is going to be great. And then I started digging into those projects a little bit more, and it's employing 5,000 people or whatever the numbers were for the next 2 years. And then it goes down to about 20 operational. And I was like, okay, well, okay, what else is going on there? Nothing, right? So you've got to kind of think about those things. There's a formula that I use for that, and that's the total project dollars divided by the population size, divided by the economic timeline times the completion probability. And you can measure the completion project probability by the different stages. So because just because someone announces a project doesn't mean it's going to be finished. So we break it into 5 stages: so announcement, planning, tenders, construction, and completion. They're the 5 stages, and then we weight them with the 20% weighting. So all of a sudden you go, okay, there's $1 billion project that's been announced, but maybe we give that a 20% weighting, and then we do the other maths around that. Yeah. So we kind of look at all these factors to answer those questions. How would we know? Because you're right, like growth, God, how would you know? But if you ask enough questions, you start to get way better answers.
Yeah, and then the other sort of associated piece with that is that, in our own work, and we focus on the strategy and the finance structuring piece, and allow buyers agents and others like yourself to then find the right solution for the particular customer's needs. But one of the things I do see is the need to have strong and growing incomes in an area, because if the incomes aren't strong and growing, then people won't be able to afford to keep paying higher prices for properties, which is exactly what we want. So is that a part of the mix for your assessment?
Yeah, 100%. So we look at we take a lot of data from the ABS and stuff. So income data and stuff, and we're looking at what the income trend is that changing? The household income. We look at public housing percentages as well. We look at what the demographic shifts are and all of that kind of stuff, because interestingly, all of this statistical numbers oriented stuff, we can group that into things like demographics, basically. Who's there, what's happening, what the numbers look like. Interestingly, the single biggest driver of growth is psychographics.
Yeah.
Right. The single biggest thing that shifts the market is the way people feel, which is very contrarian to the way a lot of people view real estate. But a great case in point is I'm here in Sydney. I'm here in Bondi. Some of the biggest trophy houses in Sydney are not far from me: Vaucluse, Point Piper, things like that. Has there been any new infrastructure projects in Point Piper? No. Okay, so why is it that those properties are suddenly selling for 30% more than they were a couple of years ago? Because people feel differently about them. Nothing's changed. And you can see the same effect happen in small regional towns where ostensibly nothing will change except sentiment, right? And so once you can start to understand that kind of stuff as well, and how do people, what usually influences sentiment? Are people living a better life? Is their standard of living improving? Is there gentrification? Are new and younger people coming into the area giving a new lease of life and things like that? So there's all this soft metric stuff that you've got to analyze as well. And interestingly, we're in the process of developing an artificial intelligence tool to basically, a little bit of secret sauce here, but basically to analyze all of the published media in any given location and to do a sentiment analysis to understand the way that information is being reported in the area, to give us an intrinsic look into how people feel, which is really interesting.
Yeah, a similar things. There's a NTF that's been released in the equity space called Buzz that is picking up on social media sentiment to look at what shares might actually take off.
Interesting.
What you're talking about is exactly the same in the property space. And what I love about this, and 100% agree with you, is that, and this is one of the benefits of property over other investment assets, is that investors are only 30% of most markets at best.
Yeah.
And therefore, most homes are bought on emotion.
Yeah.
So if we're recognising that emotion's a driver and you're tapping into measuring that emotion, then you're 100% right. It's the emotion that's going to, particularly if it's in a short supply, tightly held environment, then emotion is the only thing that's effectively going to drive the values, only because people feel good about, I want to be there.
Exactly. And so then you've got to think, what is happening to make people feel differently? Because jobs are good, like jobs are great, and that gives people an income source. But the way that they feel is a lot deeper than are they earning money.
Totally.
It's are the streets being kept clean? Is there, is the council doing, building new parks, things like that. So you've got to look at all these other kind of factors as well, and overall livability. So yeah, we absolutely analyse all that kind of stuff.
No, I love that, mate. Well, that's another great segue into where we're at in the market right here, right now, because, and I've been a very strong advocate of buyers agents, because particularly in a market that is we're in a boom phase. Let's not call anything other than what we are. Yeah. And the last time I saw this was back in 2001, mate. I've been in property for a long time, and all of the planets have aligned. We've got lending, relaxation, increasing capacities. We've got pent-up demand that's come through from COVID. Yep. We've got the surplus funds that have been pumped into the economy as a result of that, which is and a lot of people haven't cottoned on to the fact that this is what's happening. Yeah. And those that are starting to tip their toe in the water are suddenly finding that their good properties are gone in a flash, and they're having to pay a lot more for them. Yeah. Which for me is the perfect reason why you should be engaging a buyer's agent to help you. Yeah. I'd love you to do three things. Give us your sense of where the market's at and where it's heading. Talk a little bit about the sort of negotiation tips that if they are going to try and have a crack at it on their own, what they can do to give themselves the best chance. And then thirdly, why they would be engaging Dash Dot as their buyer's agent to give them an even better result.
Yeah, cool. All right, so I want to talk about the market first, because I've got a bit of a contrarian view around where you should be buying. The biggest mistake that I see a lot of people make is they buy in hotspots. You need to buy before it's a hotspot. So, for example, we can look as it currently stands today, there's markets like Newcastle, maybe not because it's just got a little bit flooded, but up until maybe 2 weeks ago, Newcastle was booming and all of these places are booming. Sunshine Coast, booming. All these places are booming and everyone's going, oh my God, it's booming. I need to go and buy there. Oh my God, I'm trying to buy there. But oh my God, they're going for like $100,000 more than asking. Wrong place to buy. Wrong. You're in the wrong place. Walk away. And that can be really hard for people because they're seeing growth and they're going, but I can see the growth. It's right there. But the thing is, you're chasing losses because that growth is getting priced into the market already. Yep. Okay. So basically, if it's a hotspot now, you're 2 years too late. So that's basically the general premise. So the tricky part about that is that people need to retrain the way they think. The way that we work is we are typically right on the front, just in the same way that I talked about trying to find the edge earlier in my life. We find the edge now. We stand on the edge and we look over it and we look across the precipice and we say, okay, where's next? Not where is now. Okay, so for example, we were buying in the Perth market up until recently. We haven't bought there, in the last few months, but we were buying up until recently. But by buying in the market when there was less competition, we managed to secure great assets at great prices, and some of them have grown by 12% in the last 4 months. Yeah. Right? That's the difference between trying to buy now, where you're going to be actually paying more than the intrinsic value of the asset, and therefore you're actually waiting for that to make sense. It doesn't make sense from day one. Yeah. So in terms of how to navigate the current market, I think a lot of people have got to really, really start to challenge the way they think. Now, there's a big potential risk there, though, because when you say that, you go, okay, look where it's not a hotspot. So it's like, okay, cool. So I'll look for markets that are doing nothing. And it's very easy for people to go and follow a red herring and just buy in some random town because they're like, well, the market's not booming here. Therefore, it might be the right time in the cycle, And so they end up buying the wrong property, the wrong place, wrong time. And it's interesting. I've got a friend in New Zealand, and New Zealand has been been going gangbusters in terms of growth. Yeah. And he's actually buyer's agent over there. And he's been saying people have been doing that exact thing. They've been going to the far-flung, outer reaches of the, regional areas and buying in towns that have got no fundamentals just because they can, and the yields because they can still get properties at the right price. Of course. And so this is the big risk. So you've got to make sure you do your research. The benefit of doing that, there's this huge hidden benefit in doing it. Of course, you get better properties. Yes, you get more growth because you get in there earlier, all of that kind of stuff. But here's the hidden benefit. You actually get to have a much more enjoyable buying experience. Yeah. You're not fighting people. You're not going into war. I don't like to be in those environments. When it starts to get to a market where we're involved in multi-offers and things like that, that's actually a sign for us to leave. That's actually a sign to okay, cool. Everyone else is here. All right, guys. Let's move on. Now, if you can get in a little bit before, you're actually able to have really beautiful conversations with people. And this is how I like to approach negotiation. I think negotiation should be ethical on all fronts. I don't think, I love sales. I love the art and craft of sales from the perspective that I love language and psychology and people and things like that. But I certainly do not like the idea of trying to persuade or beat people or anything like that. I'm a lover, not a fighter. So the way that you can approach these conversations is, okay, so why are they selling it? What is the reason they're selling it? Okay, what is the objective that they're looking for? Is they looking to get it sold quickly? They're looking for the highest price? What do they need to make sure they're happy? Great. And when you can understand those objectives, then you can position yourself to support those objectives in an advantageous way for yourself. So, for example, if they say, look, we want it sold quickly. So, for example, some of the markets, it's quite interesting, some of the markets we're in at the moment, for the last 2 months, we've been able to just, and this is the benefit of getting into a market early, basically walk around and just go, we'll have that one and that one and that one, and then pick out the best deals. We're getting triplexes and quadplexes for $50,000, $70,000 under market value, things like that.
Yeah.
Then, interestingly, what happens is the market starts to move and people start to go, oh my God, I think I can sell a property now. It might have been a flat market for a little bit period of time. But the question is, are you trying to sell it quickly or are you trying to sell it for the best price? If it's quickly, great. Maybe you can get it cheaper. If it's for the best price, maybe you can get it on better terms.
Yeah, exactly. And immediately you're looking at terms other than just price, then suddenly you're negotiating in a space where no one else is.
Yeah.
And you've distinguished yourself from everyone else who's trying to get that property and understanding what the seller really wants, what's really important to the seller. I mean, the seller may be buying another property and you releasing the deposit early to the vendor to enable them to do that is probably going to be worth more than someone else who might pay an extra 20 or 30 grand.
Yep.
But isn't going to facilitate the next purchase. So
price is not value.
Yeah, it's spot on, mate. No, I absolutely love that. No, that's brilliant, mate. Mate, it's something else that I think that I'd love to get your thoughts on because it's a bit like shares. I see a lot of people chasing. They've got to try and time the market, and for me, because I'm a bit of a Buffett, I call it the bushy Buffettisms. My view is if I do the right research and I get the right property, I'm in no hurry to get rid of that property. And providing I know that the fundamentals are there, the growth doesn't happen tomorrow, next week, next year, or 5 years. It might be 8 or 10 years away before I see the growth.
Yep.
But if I'm holding it for 15 years. And it's at 15 or 20 years, and that's the time horizon I'm looking for the growth.
Yep.
Then and most property cycles take about 15 years. Then, providing all those other drivers there that you've mentioned so well, you don't have to pick it at the bottom or the top. You just need to make sure that those growth drivers are going to occur, and then stay long enough to actually enjoy the fruit. What's your thoughts on that?
It's great. I'm so glad you brought that up. I don't believe that you can time the bottom or the top, but I believe that anyone who thinks that you can't time the right time to enter into a market, I think that's a broken idea. Yeah. Because if you don't believe that you can time your entry into a market to be an advantageous position to enter, you may as well buy anything, anywhere. You don't need a strategy. Just go buy something, right? Because it doesn't matter. You can't time it. No one knows what's going to happen. You can't tell if it's going to grow. We'll just go buy anything, and off you go. And that's also just doesn't stack up.
No,
so you've got to make investment decisions that you fundamentally believe are going to work for the long term, right?
Yeah, 100%. And those fundamental, all of those drivers of that
100%.
All of that stuff's got to be there.
Yep.
Because you're right. I mean, and I agree with you. The rising tide doesn't float all ships, mate. Particularly in property. The difference property. It doesn't matter what conditions they're in.
Totally. The difference between we did an analysis on it. The difference between the right property and the wrong property, or the right place in the street and wrong, right, can be the difference of 50 meters, and it can mean a difference of 1.8% compounding in growth. That's wild. That's huge.
Let's put some perspective around that for the listeners, because 1.8% in compounding growth over 10 or 15 year period is going to be anywhere from, depending on how much you're paying the property, anywhere between $500,000 and then over $1 million in extra capital growth. That's what
exactly.
we're talking. That's what we're talking. It's a very significant impact on the end result. So for those people who think about buying a dog property and wrong here because it's got a good yield, you're really doing yourself a massive disservice in terms of the nest egg that you're going to enjoy at the end of that journey.
Totally.
Mate, that's been awesome.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, no. What I'd love to just bridge into quickly, because I think I love your book, mate, and you've been kind enough to allow me to have a read, a bit of a speed reader. I'm a bit like you, mate. I voracious reader, rabid reader. I call myself. Really, I just soak it up. Your book, Limitless, which I strongly recommend the listeners get their hands on. Talk to us a bit about it, because I think Limitless actually, the title of the book actually sums you up really well. Tell us why Limitless and why people should read it.
Well, firstly, it's a property book that's probably only about 30% about property. Right? So a big portion of it is about personal development and mindset. And I believe that so there's two sides to the Limitless equation. Firstly, if on the property side, if you can get it right, if you can understand how to find the right properties, i.e. with the right metrics, the right yields, in the right time, all of that kind of stuff, you actually can build an exponential property portfolio. You actually can. Now, sure, I've only got 3 right now, that's cool. And there's a variety of reasons for that. Stuck on finance, might need to have a chat with you, Bushy. But, the reality of the situation is if you get it right, you can actually build an exponential property portfolio. Now, 90% of property investors never get past 2 properties. Or 94% actually never get past 2 properties. 76% never get past 1. Yeah. Okay? So the idea that you have to get stuck is, I think, a fallacy. Just like anything, I don't believe there are barriers to anything. Anyone can achieve anything they want in life if they are prepared to find where those edges are and push past them. Anyone can become a brain surgeon. Anyone can go to space. Anyone can do anything as long as they're prepared to push in that direction. Now, if you can get your property portfolio right, it can be essentially limitless. Now, could you buy 1 million properties? Maybe not, right? But the premise is the same. But at the same time, I think it really comes down to internally and about yourself. I think that we can ultimately have, do, be, and achieve anything and everything that we want in life, and in the volumes that we want it, and at the speed that we want it, as long as we're prepared to believe and as long as we're prepared to look forward and to find it. So that's kind of the premise of Limitless. I believe that we are all limitless and we can have everything that we want in life.
Absolutely love it, mate. And you summed that up beautifully. It's my own credo. I use different words to describe the same thing, but exactly the same end result, mate. And it starts with belief, and that's why I talk about that sustainable success is at the intersection of self, which is how we think and our attitudes. Health, which is about our habits and how we actually live our life day to day, because that builds the resilience and the persistence and the patience that then enables us to achieve wealth. And if we've got all of those 3 intersecting together, then that is a sustainable solution. If you leave one of those pieces of that triangle out, you might achieve flash in the pan overnight, one hit wonder success, but it won't be sustainable. So
100%.
Mate, I love that, mate. I'm just going to, before we jump into the ambush round, I just want to talk a little bit about the future. So we've talked a lot about the past, and yourself and Gavin, you've spoken to me about how you're a visionary person. Yeah. Paint out for, and there is no end game, but what's your ideal lifestyle look like, mate? Give us your perfect day, your perfect week, perfect year, who you're with, what are you doing, where you're doing it, and then talk to us about what you're investing in that's helping to make that happen. Yeah, it's great because I think about it all the time. So for me, I am a visionary, right? So what I'm building with Dashdot is our mission is to transform the way Australia invests.
quite meaningfully. So that's a big vision that I've got, and that's a big part of where I want the future to be for me. And we've already spoken about the reasons why, and we're investing heavily in doing that. So we're investing heavily financially in doing that. We're investing in technology and research, and so when we're talking about like where are we investing money, we're investing in money in order to improve the lives of others, to basically build better ways to help people invest better, and that's a huge thing. I think for me, the vision of the future is kind of not dissimilar from anybody else's. It's do what you want, when you want, with who you want. I'm lucky enough that I've always walked my own path. I've always kind of done what I want when I want it and with who I want it. So I've always had that degree of freedom. But you want to be able to do it from an economic position where you're not obliged to do things that you maybe don't want to do because of economic obligation. So what that means in simple terms is you want to be able to have the financial opportunity to support you living your best life. What does that look like for me? Honestly, waterfront mansion in the eastern suburbs of Sydney. I've got visions of building a fully renewable energy super yacht, not just one with a sail either, because that's obviously renewable energy. There's all these kind of things as well, because I'm just living in this beautiful, abundant future. I live in a state of constant abundance, and so for me, I do believe that I can have, do, and be anything and I want. And I have desires for great wealth. Not because I have a desire for great suits. I mean, I still wear black t-shirts and things like that. I don't have this desire to have more shiny things. But for me, it's about how much I can use that to create impact for myself and other people and everything like that.
Yeah. So yeah, and I'd love. Our current credo at the moment is more life, less stuff.
Yeah,
because people get tangled up with material possessions that create jobs, basically, whereas life ultimately is about experience.
100%. My vision of like success is sailing around the world like for years on end.
Yeah,
that's my vision of success. I've never sailed. I don't even know if I'm going to like it, but that's the vision that I'm working towards, right? So I went and got my boat license a couple of weeks ago. I thought I better move in the direction at least, right? So, but in terms of, it's a funny one, right? In terms of what are we investing in to make that happen? Right now it's business. It's a funny thing. When we started the business, when we had this, all right, we can help other people. Yeah, let's go and do this. And we started a business, not really thinking about what the implication of that was on finance for buying property. So, that kind of put a pause on our property journey, which is quite funny.
Only a pause though, mate. So
yeah, I know it's only a pause, but what's awesome, in the interim is we've, with our clients developed really amazing relationships, and some of those guys are on property number 7. We're the fastest we actually helped anyone hit their financial freedom number, which was, it's the way that I like to think about financial freedom is minimum viable life. What is required for you to not have financial obesity, not super yachts and jets, but what is required for you to wake up and go and read a book and not have to worry about anything else? That's it. Simple, right? And so the fastest we've been able to help anyone else do that was 5 months, right? 5 months. 5 months from go to O. We took them, to be fair, they had one property already. And then in 5 months, we got them to a point where they were making $6,000 net cash flow a month. And that's them that achieved their financial freedom goal. So it's so awesome. And I believe that we can do that too as soon as we get our finance sorted. But in the meantime, we're just investing in the business, and we're not investing in building a bigger business for the sake of having a big business. We're investing in building a business that is good and that is ethical and that serves others. We're building a business based on 2 pillars only 2: deep, lasting relationships with our clients and innovative, high-performance results. So we get the best results in the market, very proud of it, and we have the best relationships. And if we just do those 2 things consistently over and over, we're going to have a better life, and everybody else is going to have a better life as well.
No, love it, mate. That's brilliant, very inspirational. Mate, I want to jump into what I affectionately refer to as the ambush round, which are just
I struggle with these kind of like rapid-fire questions because I'm so esoteric in the way that I think. I'm going to do my best.
No, mate, you'll kill it. First one's the obvious one, and you would have had this one 15 times already in past podcasts, but what's your favourite quote and why?
Hell on earth would be to meet the person you could have been.
Yeah, love it. Why?
Because I think it serves as a good reflection piece to assess what are you doing now, and are you going to be, if when you get to your end of days, nothing could be worse than realizing you hadn't lived up to your fullest potential. And that to me is the idea, like hell on earth would be to meet the person that you could have been. I want to meet that person and stare them square in the eye and say, I know you because I am you.
Yeah, I love it, mate. If one thing I will not leave the earth on is with any regret.
Yeah.
It's because any regret at all is a telltale sign of a wasted opportunity.
100%.
So, yeah, and I love that, mate. Back on that, and you're a rabid reader like myself. What's the top book that you'd recommend the listeners have a read of, and why?
Well, it's a bit of a business book, all right? But it's the best book. Actually, I'm going to give you two. I'm going to give you two, Bushy. I'm going to give them for two different reasons. But both of them because I read them 7 times last year each. One is a book called The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham. And that is ostensibly a book about business, but it is actually a book about thinking. That's all it is about. It's about questioning your assumptions and practicing the art of thinking to get to better result. It is a beautiful book that only causes you to become a better thinker. And that's all we ever need to do is, we don't need to work out how to win more. We need to work out how to lose less, right? And we can lose less. All you need to do is plug the holes. Just work out where you're not winning and stop doing that. Simple. If you can take the sum of all of the financial mistakes you've ever made and just undo those, you'd be a very, very wealthy person, right? So it's not about making better decisions. It's about making less dumb ones. That's what that book is about. The other one is a bit of a different tack. The 7 Laws of Spiritual Success by Deepak Chopra. It's impactful because of its simplicity and its pragmatic ability to blend metaphysical concepts with practical outcomes. So a lot of people will have read things like Think and Grow Rich or some other kind of personal development books and all of this kind of stuff. And there's all these, interestingly, if you read enough of them, you're going to notice some similarities. And those similarities, if you dig into those and follow those threads, all come back to some other points, typically in religions, often based in Buddhism and heaps of other different stuff. Yeah. What Deepak Chopra does with that book is he distills down all of those seemingly disparate ideas that might appear in many different places, puts them all in one place and explains the sequence that you need to go through. It's actually not just randomly, hey, there's 7 things. It's like, no, step 1 is this and step 7 is this. And if you do it in that order, you're going to be more fulfilled and more successful. And I've got to say, coincidence, not sure. But when I read that book, from when I read that book for the first time to now, my life has become exponentially better, like emotionally, financially, spiritually, all of the stuff. In the short period of time since I've read the book, I've listened to it 7 times since. So I think that there's something in it. So I'd recommend checking it out. Yeah,
no, definitely. And you touched on a very good point, mate. And it's in our scientific world, which has become quite isolated really from the spiritual realm, because the spiritual realm gets this woo-woo sort of connotation by a lot of people.
Yeah.
If I put it back in the context of the self-help wealth routine, once we start to embrace the intuitive us, which is we ignore every day of the week, mate, and start looking at us in the context of a universal connection, then stuff starts to make sense, and
totally.
And it gives you a much better way of making good decisions, actually.
100%.
Looking beyond the confines of what's between your ears. So now, mate, I haven't read that one, so I'm actually going to dig in, and I love The Road Less Stupid, mate. I've read a lot of books, and I haven't read either of those, so they're definitely going in the Kindle after we get off the
awesome
tonight, mate. Mate, this next question is a little bit left field, but all of our clients, everyone in Australia feels like they pay too much tax. What's the best legal thing that you've done to minimise the tax you pay?
Again, might be a little contrarian, but I don't. And the reason for that is, I want to be tax intelligent, of course, right? So, there's no kind of big hacks. It's like, okay, if I'm spending something on business, great, it's a business expense. I'm not trying to reduce my tax.
Yeah.
I want, if, me paying tax, that means I'm making money. If I'm making money, that's great. If I'm making money, I can do more things. I actually said to my accountant, I said, I don't want to deduct anything this year. I want to pay all the tax. Just give me all the tax.
Right. If you're going to buy property, you're going to need to do that anyway.
Totally. I think yes, you want to be tax intelligent. No, you don't want to waste money. Yep. All that kind of stuff. But it's way more important to be profitable. I can't wait for the day that I pay $1 million in tax. Yeah. That's going to be a great day. So for me, it's not, I don't have a tax minimization strategy.
No, brilliant, mate. No, and that's great. And you're absolutely right. My accountant keeps saying, if you want to pay less tax, I'll just charge you more. Yeah, lose money. Yeah, easy. You want to pay less tax? Just go and lose money. Oof, yeah, sounds rough. Yeah. Switch back into the investment arena for a second. Yep. What's both the best and the worst piece of investment advice that you've ever received?
The best piece that I've received was about the fact that if you invest in a trust and the trust is profitable, then the trust becomes a self-supporting entity that can support its own debt. That's pretty interesting.
Yep.
That was a pretty fascinating and pretty valuable piece of information when I learnt that.
Yep.
So suddenly trust started to make sense to me because I never really understood this whole this philia basically for asset protection. I was like, okay, I'm not buying stuff that's that risky. But once I suddenly realized I could use that as a tool to extend my borrowing capacity in very significant ways, I was like, right, trusts, let's go. So that's probably the best advice. Worst advice, which I didn't really took on board anyway. Well, aside from the property doubles every 7 years, was that negative gearing was a good strategy. Full stop. I'm very anti that.
Yeah. But interestingly, you can use the mechanisms and whatnot are associated with negative gearing to produce a positive cash flow property.
Yeah, you can, right? Yeah, you can. So like the depreciation, the tax back and all of that kind of stuff, I totally get it. But if you put in a position where you'd rather negatively gear or just buy a property that produces more income than it uses, I mean, I think the choice is clear. All things being equal, two properties next to each other, and one was negatively geared and one was positive net cash flow.
Yeah, no, spot on. Last question in the round, then, mate. What's a personal habit that you believe contributes most to your success today?
I wake up at 4:45 every morning and I spend at least 30 minutes writing out my vision or spending time thinking and asking myself questions. Done it every day for a very long period of time. Spend time to be with your thoughts and to use those thoughts to channel your actions towards a future that you desire. It's been the biggest accelerator. Once I actually literally started getting up every morning and writing down my goals, where do I want to be? And the reason I was like, waterfront mansion in Sydney, things like I write that every morning. I write all this stuff out every single morning. So I know where I'm going. And if you know where you're going, then it's a lot easier to get there.
Well, and also the repetition of doing what you're doing becomes its own magnet. And we talked about, you spoke about Chopper a minute ago. If we are indelibly writing that stuff every day into our subconscious, not our conscious mind, but our subconscious mind, that becomes a magnet, mate.
100%.
You are drawn to it. It will happen. It's not a question mark. It will happen.
Totally. So all of this stuff, law of attraction, metaphysics, all of that kind of stuff, it's all legit. Like once you get down to a quantum scientific analysis of it, it's all real. Like it is all absolutely real on a purely scientific basis, not just like some, incense waving hippie kind of woo woo yeah. It's not that at all. Like it's real stuff, right? And so if you have the ability to influence your environment simply by the way that you can influence your thoughts. And so you can actually, that you can actually be limitless. You can actually have everything that you desire in the quantities you desire at the speed that you desire it, as long as you choose to believe. That requires that you believe it, not just think it. And in order to believe it, it has to be in your subconscious. And for it to be in your subconscious, it has to be so true that there is no part of you that thinks it is not true. The only way to make that so is to brainwash yourself. And, I'm like, cool. I want to brainwash myself to success. Happy days. So far, happy with how the journey's going. Considering only a few years ago, I was basically, broke and bankrupt and, a drug addict. Life, purely by changing the way that I think and by focusing on shifting that, it's completely transformed my life.
Gold, mate. Absolute gold, which is a beautiful lead into the very last question, mate, which gives you an opportunity to sum all this up. If I gave you a microphone that spoke to every single one of the 7.7 billion people that are currently alive in the world, mate, and I gave you 60 seconds to talk, what would you say?
Oh, I wasn't ready for this one.
Expand on limitless, because I think that absolutely sums it up, mate.
Yeah, I think we have kind of summed it up a little bit in this episode already. I mean, there is literally no limitation to anything. There is no limitation to your physical self. There is no limitation to money. There is no limitation to the universe. There is no limitation to your potential. And the more that you can understand that, and again, on a scientific level, not just some ideological, metaphorical kind of level, but on a scientific, physical, actual sense, there's no differentiating factor between my human self and the window that's right next to me. The only thing that's different is energy. And so therefore, if you can understand the only different thing is energy, and you can manipulate that by the way that you think, act, be, everything like that, you can literally craft the world around you into the likeness that you want it. You can have the impact that you want, the success that you want, the prosperity that you want, the happiness that you want, everything that you want, everything that your mind can perceive, it can achieve, as Napoleon Hill would have said. So I believe that everyone's obligation is to decide what it is they want out of life and have it. You can have whatever it is you want in life. You just need to decide what it is.
And there's the challenge we're going to leave with the listeners, Goose, because I don't know about you. The first question we ask when people come to talk to us about property is, talk to me about what your ideal lifestyle looks like. Tell me what your vision of your future is. And 99 out of 100 of those people go, oh, I haven't really thought about that.
Yeah, totally. Yep.
So if there's one take home from this episode today, it is get clear on your vision. Spend some time, as you do, Goose, getting up at early in the morning without any other interruption, and just write it down, and it'll start to flow, or draw a picture, or get a collage of pictures. Start to really put some shape around what that is, because it also ties back to what you said around how you turn the corner in relation to some of those addictive behaviours. It becomes a purpose, it becomes a reason, and as soon as you've got that purpose and a reason, you're attracted to it. And then all of a sudden, everything you're doing is starting to lead you in that direction, mate. So, mate, I love talking to you today, mate. It's been very infectious, very inspirational and motivational. I love your energy. It's great to be able to spend some time with someone who thinks very similar to myself, and really appreciate you being so generous with your time today, mate.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome, mate. We'll talk to you again.
Speak soon.
Cheers.
Well, freedom fighters, how good was that? You get a summary of all this investment gold in the show notes. Just email me on hello@khgroup.com.au. It's HELLO@khgroup.com.au. Or check us out at www.bushymartin.com.au/get-invested. I look forward to joining you next week for another episode of the Get Invested podcast. So thanks for listening. And as always, dream as if you'll live forever and live as if you'll die